You know that feeling when you check your bank account and there's actually more money than you thought? Like, not by a lot, maybe $50, but enough that you breathe differently for a second. I remember the first time I looked at my account and saw a comma. 1,000 something dollars. And honestly, it wasn't even that I was suddenly rich or anything. It was that for the first time in my life, I wasn't constantly doing mental math about whether I could afford groceries and gas in the same week. I'm Donki, and I spend way too much time thinking about why money feels harder than it should. And here's what's weird about that first $1,000. It's not really about the money itself. It's about what happens in your brain when you realize you're not drowning anymore, when you're not in survival mode every single day. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. Being broke doesn't just affect your bank account. It affects how you think. And getting to that first 1,000, it's like your brain finally has permission to think past next Tuesday, to actually plan, to stop making decisions out of pure panic. So let's talk about why this number matters so much and why the journey to get there teaches you more about money than any amount of reading ever will. Because I promise you, once you cross that line, money starts feeling less like this impossible puzzle and more like, well, something you can actually work with. Let me tell you about the weirdest part of being broke. It's not the obvious stuff, the overdraft fees, the declined cards, the pasta for every meal phase. It's what it does to your decision making. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, your brain is basically in crisis mode all the time. And you know what your brain is really bad at when it's in crisis mode? Making good, long-term decisions. It's too busy trying to solve the immediate problem, which is usually something like, how do I eat until Friday? I used to get so frustrated with myself. I'd read these personal finance articles that would be like, just save 20% of your income. And I'd think, save it from what? I'm already choosing between my phone bill and car insurance. There's no 20% floating around waiting to be saved. But here's what was actually happening. When you're in survival mode, every decision becomes weirdly transactional. You start thinking in terms of immediate trade-offs. If I skip lunch 3 times this week, I can afford that late fee. Or if I overdraft my account, at least I'll have food. You're not thinking about next month. You're not even thinking about next week. You're thinking about today. And that's not because you're bad with money or irresponsible or any of that nonsense. It's because your brain literally doesn't have the bandwidth to think beyond immediate survival. There's actually research on this. They call it the scarcity mindset. When you don't have enough of something, your brain becomes hyper-focused on that thing to the exclusion of basically everything else. It's like trying to solve a complex math problem while someone's blaring an air horn in your ear. You might be perfectly capable of solving it in normal circumstances, but right now, no chance. And this is why that first $1,000 matters so much, because it's usually the first time your brain gets to quiet down a little. It's the first time you can start thinking about next month without that constant low-level panic. I remember when I hit like $800 in my savings account, not even the full 1,000 yet, and my car made this horrifying grinding noise. Normally, that sound would have sent me into a full spiral. I'd be up at night Googling how to drive without brakes or something equally ridiculous, but this time, I was still stressed, obviously. Car problems are never fun, but I wasn't panicking because I knew I had options. I could get it looked at. I could probably fix it. I might even have money left over. That's the shift. That's what survival mode does to you and what climbing out of it feels like. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. Once you have that cushion, even a small one, the actual math of money starts changing in your favor. And I don't mean in some magical, manifest abundance kind of way. I mean, literally, the numbers start working differently. When you're broke, you pay what I call the broke tax. It's all the extra money you spend because you don't have money. The overdraft fees, the late payment charges, the fact that you can't buy the bigger, cheaper pack of toilet paper because you don't have $15 right now, even though you'd save money in the long run. I once paid $35 in overdraft fees because I forgot about an $8 Netflix charge. That's paying $43 for Netflix that month. That's insane. But when you're operating with zero margin for error, stuff like that just happens. But here's what changes when you hit that first 1,000. You get to stop paying stupid fees. You have enough buffer that those little forgotten charges don't cascade into financial disasters. You can buy the bigger pack of paper towels. You can fix small problems before they become expensive problems. One of my favorite examples of this is car maintenance. When you're broke, you ignore the weird noise because you can't afford to deal with it. Then the weird noise becomes an expensive repair. Then the expensive repair becomes a catastrophic breakdown. And suddenly you're looking at thousands of dollars instead of the $200 it would have cost to fix it early. When you have that cushion, you can actually do preventive maintenance. You can handle things when they're small. The math literally starts favoring you instead of working against you. And then there's the psychological side of it. Like when you're not constantly stressed about money, you make better decisions about money. You're not panic buying things because they're on sale. You're not making weird impulse purchases because you're trying to give yourself a tiny hit of happiness in an otherwise stressful life. I used to do this thing where I'd have a rough day and I'd treat myself to fast food, which, fine, everybody deserves a treat. But I was doing it like 3 times a week, and each time I was spending $12, $15, that's $150, $180 a month on what was basically emotional regulation disguised as dinner. Once I had a little money saved, that urge just decreased. Not because I was depriving myself, but because I wasn't using French fries as a coping mechanism for financial stress anymore. The stress was less, so I needed the coping mechanism less. And suddenly that $150 a month could go toward, actual savings. Here's something nobody tells you about saving money. It gets easier the more you do it, not in some inspirational poster kind of way, but in a really practical, mechanical way. Your first $100, that might take months. You're scraping together spare change, picking up extra shifts, eating questionable amounts of ramen. It feels impossible. Every single dollar is a fight. But somewhere around $500 or $600, something shifts. You start to believe it's actually possible, and that belief changes how you behave with money in ways you don't even consciously notice. I'll give you an example. When I had like $200 saved, if someone invited me out and I didn't really want to go, I'd still sometimes go because, social obligation or FOMO or whatever, and I'd spend $40 I didn't really want to spend on a night I didn't really want to have. But when I had $700 saved, I started saying no to stuff like that. Not because I was being cheap or antisocial, but because I had finally proven to myself that I could save money. And that made me more protective of it. I was like, I worked hard for this $700. I'm not blowing $40 of it on a mediocre Thursday night out. That's the confidence compound effect. Each dollar you save makes you slightly more likely to save the next dollar. Not because of discipline or willpower, but because you've proven to yourself that you can do it. And this goes both ways, by the way. When you see that number going up, you start to get, I don't want to say cocky, but maybe a little ambitious. You start thinking, okay, if I can get to $800, why not $1,000? And then, if I can do $1,000, why not $1,500? It's like when you first start working out and you can barely do 5 push-ups. That feels like your limit. That feels like the absolute maximum your body can handle. But then a few weeks later, you're doing 10, then 15, and you realize the limit wasn't physical, it was mental. You just needed proof that more was possible. Money works the same way. Your brain needs evidence. It needs to see that saving is actually possible before it'll fully commit to the idea. And that first $1,000, that's your proof. I remember the week I hit 4 digits. I literally took a screenshot of my bank balance, which is kind of ridiculous, but also, I don't know. It felt like an achievement. It felt like I had finally done something that past me didn't think was possible. And from that point forward, money felt different. Not easy. It's never easy, but possible. Like a problem I could solve rather than a disaster I was constantly surviving. Okay, here's the part that might sound a little weird, but stick with me. The actual process of saving your first $1,000 teaches you more about money than the $1,000 itself. Because here's the thing, to save $1,000 when you're starting from zero, you have to figure some stuff out. You have to learn where your money actually goes. You have to identify which expenses are real and which ones just feel real. You have to make choices. When I started trying to save, I thought I knew where my money went. Rent, car, food, phone, the basics. But when I actually tracked it for a month, turns out I was spending like $60 a month on beverages. Not groceries, not meals, just drinks, coffee here, energy drink there, smoothie because I felt like I deserved it. $60 doesn't sound like much, but that's $720 a year on beverages. That's like almost a whole extra month of groceries for me. And I had no idea until I actually looked. That's lesson 1. You can't fix what you can't see, and the process of saving forces you to actually look. Lesson 2 is about trade-offs. When you're trying to save money, you can't just vaguely spend less. You have to make actual decisions. You have to say, I value this more than that. For me, it was realizing I'd rather have financial stability than a fancy phone plan. So I switched to a cheaper carrier and saved $30 a month. That's $360 a year. That's more than a third of the way to $1,000 just from one decision. But here's what's important. I didn't cut everything. I kept my streaming services because honestly, that's how I decompress. I kept my occasional coffee runs because I genuinely enjoy them. The lesson wasn't deprive yourself of everything. It was figure out what actually matters to you and let go of the stuff that doesn't. Lesson 3 is about time. Saving money is slow. It's so much slower than you want it to be. And that's frustrating, but it's also valuable because it teaches you patience. It teaches you that money is a long game, not a quick fix. I think a lot of us grow up with this idea that money problems get solved in one dramatic moment. You get the big raise, you win the lottery, you have this breakthrough insight that changes everything overnight. But real life isn't like that. Real life is saving $20 this week, $35 next week, $50 the week after that. It's incremental. It's boring. It works. You know what's really weird about hitting that first 1,000? It gives you permission to think about money in ways you couldn't before. When you're broke, you can't think about investing. You can't think about retirement. You can't even really think about next year. Those things feel like fantasy concepts for other people who have their lives together. But once you have that cushion, suddenly those things start to feel possible. Not urgent, not immediate, but like something you could maybe start learning about. Something that might apply to your life eventually. I remember the first time I actually looked up what a Roth IRA was. It was like 2 weeks after I hit $1,000 in savings. And I didn't open one right away. I wasn't ready for that yet, but I could start thinking about it. I could start educating myself. The mental door was open. That's what that first 1,000 does. It shifts you from purely reactive thinking to slightly proactive thinking. You go from, how do I survive this month, to what do I want my life to look like in a year? And this is important because money isn't actually about money. Not really. It's about options. It's about having the freedom to make choices based on what you actually want, not just on what you can barely afford. When I was dead broke, I couldn't quit a job I hated because I needed every single paycheck. When I had $1,000 saved, I still couldn't quit. Let's be real, $1,000 isn't quit your job money. But I could start looking for other jobs. I could go to interviews without panicking about missing a shift. I had just enough breathing room to start moving towards something better. That's the real value of that first 1,000. It's not financial security. $1,000 isn't enough for that. But it's the first step toward agency, toward feeling like you have some control over your financial life instead of just being swept along by whatever happens. Okay, let's get practical for a minute. Because all this philosophical stuff about mindset and confidence is great, but at some point you need actual strategies to get to that $1,000. So here's what actually worked for me, with the caveat that your situation is different and you should do what makes sense for your life, not mine. First, pay yourself first, but make it automatic and small. I started with $25 a paycheck going directly to a savings account. That's it, not $100, not 20% of my income, just $25. It was small enough that I barely noticed it missing, but consistent enough that it added up. The automatic part is crucial. If you're manually transferring money to savings, you'll find reasons not to do it. Oh, it's my friend's birthday, I'll skip this week. Or I have to pay for parking maybe next time. But if it happens without you thinking about it, it just happens. Second, find your stupid money leak and fix it. For me, it was beverages. For you, it might be subscription services you forgot about, or convenience store runs, or ordering delivery when you have food at home. Everybody has one. Find yours. Fix it. That alone might get you $30, $50 a month. Third, give yourself a guilt-free spending category. This sounds counterintuitive when you're trying to save. But hear me out. If you try to cut everything, you'll feel deprived. And then you'll snap and blow a bunch of money at once. I gave myself $40 a month for whatever. Coffee, a book, a nice dinner, whatever I wanted. It was permission to be human. And weirdly, having that permission made it easier to stick to the budget everywhere else. Fourth, celebrate small wins. Every time I hit $100 increments, I'd acknowledge it. Not by spending money, that would be counterproductive, but I'd text a friend or write it down or just take a second to feel good about it, because this stuff is hard and you deserve to recognize when you're making progress. And look, sometimes life happens and you have to dip into your savings, like your car breaks down, you get sick, whatever. That's not failure. That's literally why you have savings. The goal isn't to save money and never touch it. The goal is to have money available when you need it so that emergencies don't become catastrophes. Look, I'm not going to tell you that saving your first $1,000 will solve all your problems. It won't. You'll still have bills, you'll still have stress, you'll still have months where everything seems to go wrong at once. But here's what that first $1,000 does do. It proves to you that you can do hard things, that you can make a plan and stick to it even when it's boring and slow and sometimes frustrating, that you're capable of changing your relationship with money. And more than that, it gives you the mental space to start thinking differently, to stop operating in pure survival mode and start operating in what-if mode. What if you could save more? What if you could invest? What if you could build something that actually feels stable? Your first $1,000 isn't the finish line. It's not even close, but it's the starting line for a completely different way of thinking about money. It's where you stop feeling like money is something that happens to you and start feeling like it's something you can actually work with. Will it be easy? No. Will it take longer than you want? Probably. Will you mess up along the way? Definitely. I still mess up, and I've been doing this for a while now, but that's okay. Progress isn't about being perfect. It's about being slightly better than you were yesterday, and then being slightly better again tomorrow. So if you're starting from zero or close to it, I get it. I've been there, and I'm telling you that first 1,000 is possible. It's slow. It's not glamorous, but it's absolutely, completely possible. And once you get there, everything starts to feel just a little bit different. Not perfect, not solved, just possible. And honestly, possible is a pretty good place to start.